So in Visual Basic, we use labels quite a bit. So in this video, I'm going to demonstrate labels and a lot of the properties that are available for labels. So remember, you can take a control from here and you can drag it out, or you can double click on the control and it'll appear in the left-hand corner, and then you can move it to wherever you want. So let's just start out. It's always good to immediately change the name and the text of any control you put on your form. Because once you start writing code with those controls, if you try and go back after the fact and change the label, that can cause all types of problems. So it's a good habit to get into. So remember, when the label control is selected, you'll see label 1 over here in the properties. If the form was selected, I'll see form 1, and then these are the properties that you can change for the form. So I'm going to select the label, and I'm going to come over here in my properties window, and I like to change this to alphabetical. It's in categorized now, but I find alphabetical easier. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to change the name. I'm going to use the label prefix LBL, and I'll just call this LBL message. And then I'm going to come down and I'm going to change the text property as well. So notice changing the name changes the internal name here, right? It doesn't change what appears. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to change this to hello class. Okay, now that'll change my text. All right, if at any point you don't want anything to appear in the text portion, you can just delete anything that's in here, and that'll create a label that doesn't have any text in it or has an empty string in it. That can get a little tricky when you maybe try and find it later. But here under the properties, there's a little drop down, and you can see all of your controls. So you can click on LBL message and you can get it back. So I'm going to change my text back to hello class. Okay, so let's talk about some things that we can change. One thing that you notice when you have this, if I have hello class, my label's just big enough to hold that text. And if I change it to hello Visual Basic class, now it's big enough to hold that text. This is what's called auto size. Okay, and remember, you can just click on it and drag it to wherever you want it to be on the form also. But auto size means it makes it as big as it needs to be. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to change my auto size property. You'll see by default it's set to true, and if I click here on the right side, I'll get a drop down, and I can then change it to false if I want. And now you'll notice it has sizing handles around it, and you can see that you can change the size of it to be whatever you want it to be. So let's just make this bigger, like this. Okay. All right, so that's what auto size does. You can see with every control, when you click on it, there's lots and lots of properties. You know, we can't in one class teach you how to use every property, but you should always feel free to go in and experiment. If at any point you do something you don't like, you know, there's an undo button, or you can hit Control Z and get rid of it. Okay, so I'm going to change the font now. This is the default font, but if I click here, you'll see this ellipsis, right? The 3 dots that'll pop open, you know, a menu where I can change the font. So I'm going to change the font. Let's see, I'm going to change it to Arial, and I'm going to make it, let's see, I'm going to make it bold and italic, and I'm going to change the size to 14. And you know, you can see a sample down here. You could use strike out or underline if you want. So I'm going to choose OK. Now you can see that made that bigger. So, you know, if I want to, I can make my form bigger. I can make my label bigger, whatever I want to do. All right, so now you can see by default the text is aligned in the upper left-hand corner of the text box. So I'm going to come down here to text align, and you'll see top left. That's where it is. And then if you click on this drop down, you can select, you know, top center, and you can see it move on the screen. I can choose right here, top center, middle center, and that'll center it inside of the text box. So you have a lot of options in which to change the how the text aligns within the text box itself. Okay, if I click outside the text box, you'll notice by default there's no border there. So I'm going to come up here. If you want to, you can let's see. Oops, I've got to come over here. I'm on my form. I've got to select this, and then I'm going to change the border style. Right now you'll see it's none, but if I click here, then I can choose like fixed single if I want, so I could put a little border around it, or I could change the border style to fixed 3D, right? That makes it look a little bit 3D-ish. And those are just options you have. And then I'm just going to talk about colors. So let's look at, we have a back color. We have down here a 4 color. I'm going to show you what the 4 color does. So I'm going to choose this. And there's some, default colors, but they're not very exciting. So, you can go to custom colors. You can go to some, you could choose some web colors if you want to. If you're working with web pages, there's certain colors that you're going to want to choose from. I'll just go into custom here, and let's say I'm going to change that to blue. And then you'll see that the 4 color, the color of the text has been changed. If I click here and I change the back color, I'm just going to change that to a light blue. And you'll see that that changes. Now you want to make sure that your colors are appealing to the user. You don't want to create some hideous color scheme where you have, a fluorescent yellow background with red text. That's not terribly appealing. So again, you have lots of different options here. Feel free to try them out if you want to. There's a visible property here. And I'm just going to show you, if I run this, so I'm just going to click on my Start button. It's going to run my application. Just be patient, it's not running it too quickly. And when it runs it, because the visible property is true, you'll actually see the label display. Okay, so here's my program which is running. So I'm going to close this now. But if I come over and I click on this and I change the visible property to false, and then I run it, you can see nothing displays on the form. Now you might say, why would I want to do that? Well, in this case, you probably don't want to do that. But later on, maybe you'll have a button where if you click it, you want something to appear, or if you click it, you want something to disappear. You can change the visible property using code. Okay, so I think that is what you need to know about labels. Oh wait, one more thing, sorry. If you have a label that you create, let me just pull a label out here, and you do something to it, you decide you no longer want it, all you have to do is choose it and hit the delete key, and now it's gone. And again, you have your undo up here, that's also an option for you. Okay, now that's the end of the video.